Hello, third grade. Welcome to day one of our digital learning. Congratulations for finding the channel, getting on here, getting the video started. I know I'm up bright and early, just like I normally would be with you guys, and I'm trying to keep to my routine because that's going to help me feel successful even when things are a little different. So today, I thought we would start by talking about our skills lesson for just a couple minutes so you know which worksheet to do and how to do it. Then I have both of my books, The Tales of Marigold and The One and Only Ivan. So I thought I would do a little read aloud for you guys. So first of all, let me put my coffee down and let's get started. Today in our skills workbook, you guys will be doing worksheet 4.2. So this means that we're in lesson 4 of unit 5. And this week, we're going to be working on our adverbs again. Last week, we learned about adverbs that mean how verbs do something. So if you are walking, you walk quickly. And the ly of the adverb helps us know that that's how the verb is doing it. So it's quickly is our adverb. This week, we get a little trickier. Sorry, guys. This week, we'll be talking about adverbs that tell us when verbs do something and where verbs do something. Can you guys think of any examples of adverbs that tell us when or where something is done? This is a little bit harder because they don't all have the same ending, but now we get some new tricks. So if you think about it this way, so somebody goes walking yesterday. Yesterday they went walking. So yesterday, today, tomorrow, always, sometimes, never, early, first, next, last, again, soon, and later are all examples of adverbs that tell us when the action of the verb happens. Now, what about where? Where do our verbs have their actions? So, where the action of a verb takes place could be here, there, it could be anyway, inside, outside, or somewhere. So, all of those are describing where the action of a verb takes place. I know these are kind of confusing, so remember that you can always reach out to me if you need help. So, if you're looking at the worksheet and you don't know what to do, that is okay. Please reach out to me. Your families have my phone number. If not, they need to get on Dojo, and I'll give it to them because then also you can FaceTime me if you need help with your worksheet, okay? Got it? Good. Now that you know that you're going to work on worksheet 4.2 today, I can get started with all of our read alouds. Got it? Let's go. If you are in 111, we are working in Twice Upon a Marigold. So let's get ready to go. Chapter 25. Marigold crept along the passageway, hoping she wouldn't run into anyone. She'd spent a lot of time roaming around the castle when she was a little girl, and knows much more than other princesses did. Out of curiosity mainly, but also because hardly anyone had paid much attention to her. Consequently, she knew the back ways and secret accesses to every part of the castle, including the scullery. She came out through a little used doorway that led to the farthest away storage room in the bowels of the castle. That passageway was so seldom used that there was an inch of dust on the floor. Marigold tiptoed through it, glad to have another layer of grime to disguise her. She slipped through the back door of the scullery and stood still, holding her breath. Luckily, there was so much noise that her entry went unheard. Before her was the backside of someone bent over a kettle so deep that the person was almost halfway inside it. Scrubbing away with a brush, apparently big and bristly, that it was banging on the sides, setting up a din that under other circumstances could have been interpreted as music. A continuous moaning reverberated inside the pot, a sort of singing sound to accompany the scrub brush timpani. A few more minutes in the banging and moaning stopped, and the bottom backed out of the kettle. Attached to it was a woman covered in dragon fat and soap suds. She threw down the brush and dropped onto a stool, her head in her hands. Then she shook herself, straightened her shoulders, and looked up. When she saw Marigold, she uttered a squawk. "Where did you come from? Who are you?" Marigold said casually. "Who do I look like? The Queen?" Then she laughed. "I'm supposed to help you in here now." "About time," Lazy Susan said, "now that I've almost got things finished." "You scrubbed all of these by yourself?" Marigold looked around at the accumulation of sparkling pots. She really was surprised, considering all she'd ever heard about Lazy Susan's work ethic. "All except these three. That's a lot of scrubbing. Why didn't you have some help?" "Ask old lady Clover. All this hard work was her idea. I've been sitting in here for days while the pots piled up. The only way I could get a little space for myself was to wash some so that they'd come take them away." "You mean you've been living in here?" Marigold was shocked. Such mistreatment would never happen in the castle of Xandelphia. "Well, almost. I get out for meals and to sleep at night. But the Queen assigned me to this job, so I get put in here every single morning. And every morning there have been even more pots. There are a lot of people to feed here. That means a lot of cookware," Marigold said, almost apologetically. She inspected a kettle. "But you've done a great job. This is spotless. I've heard Hoofenpoofer juice is really hard to get off." Hoofenpoofer juice. Have you ever heard of that? "How do you know that there was Hoofenpoofer juice on that?" "Oh, there's Hoofenpoofer juice on just about all of the pots. Everybody likes it, but especially King Swithbert. He's always had to have about one serving a day." It made her very sad to think of her poor father in the dungeon with none of his favorite treats. "You really think that pot looks clean?" Lazy Susan asked. "Absolutely. I don't know how you did it." "Lots of scrubbing, that's how, and some spit helped too, I discovered." Spit? Marigold wondered if she'd ever eat anything from Beauregard Castle ever again. "Oh, I washed it off, but it seemed to make it easier to get the stuck-on stuff to come off." "Well, let's get to work on the rest of these too then," Marigold said. She hoped that she'd never know what to do, as she'd never scrubbed a pot in her life. Pretty soon, Lazy Susan was giving her advice and correcting her technique to the point where Marigold began to feel quite annoyed. Scrubbing pots wasn't dragon slaying after all, and from what Marigold knew of Lazy Susan's reputation, she was certainly no expert at cleaning things herself. "You must have been doing this for a very long time," Marigold said. "Not so long," Lazy Susan's voice echoed from inside a kettle. "I guess I must just have a knack for it." Remembering what she was here for, Marigold decided it was time to get down to business. "I guess you must, but didn't I hear that you were Queen Olympia's maid? How come you're down here now?" Lazy Susan backed out of the kettle once again. "Ooh, that woman," she said through her clenched teeth, then proceeded to tell Marigold the whole story about how she and Angie had been friends and what happened to her after Angie turned back into Olympia. And I couldn't believe how different she was. She stopped speaking abruptly, as if she realized that what she had been about to say could be taken as treachery to the wrong person. Everyone in this castle had to be very smart about how they talked about Olympia, especially after what had happened to Ed, Swithbert, and Magnus. "Why don't you just go back home?" Marigold asked. "Back to Granola." You'll probably think this is silly, but I wanted to live in a castle for a while, just to see what it's like. My sister, or more, my half-sister, she's married to a prince, and she gets to live in one all the time." "Living in a castle might not be what you expected," Marigold asked. Oh my goodness, third graders, that's where I'm going to stop us for right now in this chapter. But who knows? Do you think Marigold is going to be able to convince Lazy Susan that she should come over to their side and help free everybody? I can't wait to get to find out tomorrow. But now, if you are in 209, We get to read some of the one and only Ivan. So, the most recent thing that's happened is that Ruby the elephant is now being trained in Stella's place because Stella passed away. But Ruby is not taking to it very well, and Mac has not been very kind to her. A bad dream. I lie awake peeling dried red paint from my fingertips. Bob, who accidentally walked on one of my paintings, is licking his red paws. Every so often, I glance over at the empty ring. The claw stick glints in the moonlight. Stop! No! Ruby's frantic cries startle me. Ruby, I call, you're having a bad dream. You're okay. You're safe. Where's Stella? She asks, gulping air. Before I can answer, she says, Never mind. I remember now. Go back to sleep, Ruby, I say. You've had a hard day. I can't go back to sleep, she said. I'm afraid I'll have the same dream. There was a sharp stick, and it hurt. I looked at Bob, and he looked at me. Oh, Ruby says. Mac. She put her trunk between the bars. Do you think, she hesitates, do you think Mac is mad because I hurt him today? I consider lying, but gorillas are horrible liars. Probably, I finally say. He ran away after that, Ruby says. Bob gives a scornful laugh. Crawled away is more like it. We are quiet for a while. Branches claw at the roof. A light rain drums. One of the parrots murmurs something in her sleep. Ruby breaks the silence. Ivan, I smell something funny. He can't help it, Bob says. I believe she's referring to the finger paints Julia just brought me, I say. What are finger paints? Ruby asks. You make pictures with them, I explain. Could you make a picture of me? Maybe someday. I remember Julia's picture, the one that'll be worth $1 million. I hold it up to the glass. Look, it's you. Julia made it. It's hard to see, Ruby says. There's not much moonlight. Why do I have 2 trunks? I examine the picture. Those are your feet. Why do I have 2 feet? That's called artistic license, Bob says. Ruby sighs. Could you tell me another story? She asks. I don't think I can go back to sleep. I told you all that I remember, I say with a helpless shrug. I try to think, but my thoughts keep returning to Mac and his claw stick that he hit Ruby with. Anything yet? Ruby asks. I'm working on it. Ivan, Ruby presses. Bob said you were going to save me. I search for true words. I'm working on that too. Ivan, Ruby says in a voice so low I can barely hear her. I have another question. I can tell from the sound of her voice that this will be a question I don't want to answer. Ruby taps her trunk against the rusty iron bars of her door. Do you think, she asks, that I'll die in this domain someday, like Aunt Stella? Once again, I consider lying, but when I look at Ruby, the half-formed words die in my throat. Not if I can help it, I say instead. I feel something tighten inside my chest, something dark and hot. And it's not a domain, I add. I pause, and then I say it. It's a cage. Now, this is really interesting because Ivan has always referred to his home as his domain, and he didn't like it when Stella called it a cage because he always thought of it as like the place where he really lived because he didn't really remember his childhood. But now that Stella has died and he's responsible for Ruby, what does he see it as? The idea that Ruby will spend her whole life there? Now he's starting to see it as a cage. One more chapter. The story. I look at the ring layered with fresh sawdust. I look at the skylight and a half-hidden moon. I just thought of a story, I say. Is it a made-up story or is it a true one? Ruby asks. True, I hope. Ruby leans against the bars. Her eyes hold the pale moon in them, the way a still pond holds stars. Once upon a time, I say, there was a baby elephant. She was smart and brave, and she needed to go to a place called a zoo. What's a zoo? Ruby asks. A zoo, Ruby, is a place where humans make amends. A good zoo is a place where humans take care of animals and keep them safe. Did the baby elephant get to go to a zoo? Ruby asked softly. I don't answer right away. Yes, I say at last. How did she get there? Ruby asks. She had a friend, I say, and a friend who made a promise. Ooh, Ivan, that's a big promise for a gorilla in a cage. What do you guys think? Is Ivan going to be able to get Ruby to a zoo? And a bigger question, do you think a zoo is that much better than where they are now? So, both classes come back together. Now we've read both of our stories. Now I want to make sure that you guys are ready for a video again tomorrow because this is our home base and this is where you guys will get all the information and check in with me. Remember, please have your families checking Dojo. If they are on Dojo, then you are able to message with me. Then you can get in contact with me if you need to FaceTime me to see anything about your work. And just remember to check in with each other, and you can leave some comments here below about both of our stories. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. I miss you.